Get your SH Monster Arts figures at BigBadToyStore at the link in the description.
Dragon Ball, horror, kaiju, and more. Steven's Toy Reviews.
Hey there, collectors. This is going to be Steven here, and welcome to another SH Monster Arts review, where today we're going to be looking at a figure that I am so happy to be taking a look at. I have been waiting years for this, nigh a decade, since the SH Monster Arts line has come to be the SH Monster Arts Blue Eyes White Dragon. That is right, folks. After the abysmal Godzilla -1 release, we have a new property entering into the game, and it is from the King of Games franchise itself, Yu-Gi-Oh! This is the first entry, and they started it off with a bang. Why? Because this is not a figure, if you are interested in Yu-Gi-Oh!, you should consider getting. This is going to be a figure you should consider whether or not you need 1 or 3. That's right, I'm already giving this my seal of approval. There are a couple of things that are maybe definitely in the realm of improvement, but nevertheless, this figure rocks. So let's take a look to see whether or not you should add 1 or 3 of these into your collection. So this is what I mean when it comes to varying quality control between releases and where you can really feel your money actually went into a product. When it comes to MSRP, this and Godzilla -1, I believe for US MSRP are nearly identical. They're both $140, and if you were to tell me that this was $140 and -1 Godzilla were the same, I would have to do nothing but hysterically laugh at you. Probably even more so than my 2019 Godzilla Night Colors version, because wow, this figure, though it has a few acceptable flaws, is miles better than -1. So what are the flaws with this particular figure? Well, here's what I'm going to say. First, you're going to notice that, and this is going to be a positive, they did attempt some gradient effects with the figure, but the negative side of it is, with the gradient effects that they did, with making sure the blues transition well into the white on the body, there are some real notable, I guess you may say, extreme transitions, which lead to some areas just having a very, very stark, bright white, notably on the top of the head and on the knees. Those are only some select areas I'm bringing attention to. Also, when you take a look at the figure, there are going to be some edges of the figure, which you may call mold lines, flash marks, where it almost seems as if that was not taken care of properly at the factory. And on my particular unit, it almost looks as if the paint was starting to rub off at some point. This may be because they didn't use any protective plastic sheets at the factory getting this shipped out. Perhaps that's a reason why, but nevertheless, aside from those two things, mine is fantastic. I really love this thing. There are subtle shades of blue and gray, which sometimes is blue, that blend in really well throughout the figure to give it a nice pearlescent look. The metallic blue eyes, rim shot, look very, very nice, and the only real change from prototype to final product in terms of paint scheme is that they gave him a more so purple tongue instead of red. I will say that I would have liked to have seen purple incorporated more so into the actual paint of the final product, because purple is something that sort of weasels its way into the Blue Eyes line as the different fusions and rituals and so forth continue, but nevertheless, I think that the pearlescent finish, along with the little hint of glitter found throughout the figure, looks stunning. Overall, I think that they really did an amazing job with the Blue Eyes White Dragon, and they captured the feeling that sometimes the white dragon here of the franchise sometimes really isn't white. He can be blue, he can be silver, yeah, a whole bunch of different colors. I forget which take I'm on, I think number 4. Blue Eyes' articulation is fantastic. And yes, he is standing without any sort of like tripod support. His tail's off the ground. So let's talk about it, because there are a lot of neat little tips and tricks here. And I think you're going to agree it's pretty solid. So first and foremost, the tongue is going to be on a ball joint, so it actually moves around and it can wiggle a bit. The jaw is on a ball joint as well, but the tongue pretty much only goes about, I'd say that's about 1/3 of the way up. So it can't like go all the way up like maybe some Godzilla figures can do. If you're familiar with the kaiju proper, the Daikaiju in the SH Monster Arts line. But yes, the mouth is going to be on a ball joint. And let's say comparative to Rathalos, there is nothing blocking it, so you can open it freely no matter what. And yes, we can get the slack jaw if you would like, so go ahead and screen cap that to show that it's bad. Now, we do have, let me move the wing out of the way here to show you. Very nice wing. We do have like the armor plating on the back of the head. These are going to be on hinges, and thankfully these can easily move out of the way for any sort of articulation restriction, which there's pretty much going to be none on the neck here. The neck moves wonderfully. Just look at that. Can he look up? The better question is, he can look that far behind him and that far straight down, and he can crank his neck that far that way. I think you get the point that I'm trying to say here. But, yeah, SH MonsterArts Tails. Where are you at, though? I think you get my point. Okay, so we'll talk about the arms and the legs in just a little bit, because I want to focus on pretty much the remainder of... This is effectively just a tail with arms, legs, and wings, because the main body is going to be a system of ball joints as well. And as a matter of fact, we do have a double axis ball joint, or barbell style. Let me go ahead and move that nice wing out of the way. In the main portion of the body, so like for the ab crunch area here. And then we do also have some sleeve cover-ups, if you will. So if you go ahead and you move and you dislocate the joint, this portion here can just freely float back into place. No problem whatsoever. So we have this like armor plating, if you will, covers up for Blue Eyes fantastically. And then we do have the tail, which starts here and moves all the way down up until this point of the sculpt, which once again is all ball jointed goodness that doesn't pop off. There was one segment down here that popped off once on me during one of the original takes I did for this, but otherwise everything is good. The range of movement is really nice and solid. You can see that we have fantastic range, which is great. For the arms, so at the shoulders, we are going to have ball joints, so we can't really get Blue Eyes to T-pose. Not really. That's about... Well, all right, so I pushed it real hard. So you can see it is a ball joint. We won't pop off at the tail or the neck, but first time for everything at the shoulder. So that is about as much for a T-pose. And then we can spin the arms around, obviously. Move the arm out of the way. And then we get a little bit of rocking movement in and out. But that is mostly going to be done at the elbow, which is going to have a hinge, single hinge, so he can bend his arm that far out. And because of the sculpt, that is about how far up he's going to be able to bend the elbow. It's a peg that plugs into the bicep, so that's where we're going to get the sort of bicep swivel, and then we're going to have a rotation at the forearm, so that will swivel as well. Keep in mind the way that the arms are sculpted, the arm parts, because we do have different bends and different cutaways, so this way we can get the most range out of the articulation. However, when it comes to the wrist, which is going to be like a standard figure art style wrist, even at the same point as the elbow, where we do have a peg plugged in the forearm, a peg that plugs into the hand, and then we do have a hinge, so this way you have to be mindful of like twisting and turning and getting the rocker movement. You can see that there's this little bit of a sleeve here that blocks the wrist motion for the hand, so that's kind of weird. But yeah, he can definitely put his hand all the way down like that, but c'est la vie. For the hips and the rest of the legs, pretty much identical to the arms. So Blue Eyes can kick about that far forward and that far back, but do keep in mind the body. You don't want to scrape up against anything. You can kick about that far out to the side for the splits purposes. So it's double axis, so you can see you can't really push up or down though. Knees, same sort of joints as the elbow. Single hinge, you can rotate for swivels. But for the ankles here, they are ball joints. We do get some good range of movement, but they are small, and they do seem to be not only physically weak because they are rather thin, but they do also seem to not hold the weight rather well. So if you do know how to balance your figures, this works relatively fine, but just keep in mind as well, if you're gonna put him in any risky poses, maybe you should use the support stand. The wings. I really like how they did the wings here for the SH MonsterArts Blue Eyes. Some don't, but I do think that the way it was done here was fantastic. We have the swivel and hinge system like we have here, here, and here at the base of the wings. So we can spin them at the base for the swivel, and then we do have a hinge. Okay. Then this hinge joint plugs into the base of the wing. This base of the wing is possible, as you saw, to turn, which means, in short, you can adjust that hinge and which direction it moves. It's very important to notice that is different than a standard ball joint, because that direction that the hinge will move, you cannot get the hinge to go up and down, only in and out. So what you're going to have to do is adjust that rotation at the base of the wing where it plugs in to the actual wing, and then you're going to have to adjust the hinge to go up and down. So it can do, thank you, it can do this, but then it won't be able to do this, if that makes sense. Anyway, so we'll have that, and it moves all the way up to the top here, which is once again a similar sort of joint. So we hinge that way, and then we have swivel movement, and then these two plates are going to be on ball joints, and they move really, really well. So Blue Eyes can really spread the wing out nicely. We can get some good closed gaps. Yep, pretty much everything looks fine, nice and uniform. Or if you would like, you can push everything in on itself and fold Blue Eyes' wings up. You can have it if you need for photography, like hide it behind Blue Eyes, no problem. Or if you really want to, or you can just kind of bend it in like that. You can have the wings sort of fold over, if you will. So you can do a lot of different stuff with the wings. Pretty solid. So overall, yeah, the articulation section was pretty long because there's a little bit to talk about here, but I think what they did for Blue Eyes is really rather cool here. Now, before we get into the accessories, which is going to be rather important, here's going to be a fun section that I would like to do, which we are going to have some comparisons to the Blue Eyes White Dragon artworks in the TCG. So if you are interested in getting Blue Eyes in any particular reference pose up on the shelf, maybe SDK, LOB, some of the Jump promos, hey, here's some ideas for you. So yeah, which specific Blue Eyes is this modeled after? I don't really know, but here you go. Now accessories, and we're doing things a little bit differently here because as much as, we get some solid stuff, we don't really get a whole lot here with Blue Eyes. So for Tamashii Nations and their dragons, they usually include support stands which do work, though they are a bit cumbersome and sometimes pretty difficult to put together. And then we do have the Burst Stream of Destruction or the White Lightning Charge Up effect part, which is pretty cool. Despite the fact that, we have the stand and we don't have a full on White Lightning effect, which, but okay. So let's go ahead and let's pop this part out first, and let me talk to you about the support stand. So here's what it looks like when we have everything put together. Now, if you are taking a look at the promo shots where we do have the stand in place, you've seen some displays, which may or may not have the legs on backwards. You'll see that we have the smallest portion of the, that's not a spike, whatever this is, seated in the stand part here. And actually, if you take this little cup, I guess you may say, it does fit this to form. So it actually fits it pretty well. However, it doesn't, in actual execution, fit it perfectly. It's only going to hold on to it by just a teeny tiny bit. So keep that in mind. And realistically speaking, it's only really going to be used to help support Blue Eyes with the weight of the wings and to keep them up. And pretty much, unless you're really willing to finagle it, only if he's flapping his wings and to keep them up in the air. Because, and this is good, I can go ahead and pop these off now. I don't think your shelf is going to get much more rocking than that. Right? Yeah, so the main cradle that Blue Eyes is going to come with is actually going to be seated pretty much at the ridges right between the legs. So right where the pelvis is going to be. Let me refocus in there so you can clearly see. Okay, there we go. So right there. All right, so that is going to be perfect for good old Blue Eyes, right? Okay, so that is all fine and all dandy. And yeah, you can get Blue Eyes flying and gliding and all that fun stuff. It does have a point of articulation, so you can rock Blue Eyes back. And that may be more so where the support stands can come into play. So this way you can have that extra level of support for the wings. So that is definitely where I can see these coming into play. And, you cupping the wings here to make sure that Blue Eyes is supported well enough. But realistically speaking, even then, no. I think we're pretty good. Yeah. All of the support stands are separate pieces that plug into the support base that you can see here. These are all essentially Tamashii stage arms, but they are a bit longer than usual, and they are actually separate here. So something to keep in mind. So when we do have the wing support arms, we do have one long arm part, we do have one extender part, and then we do have one attachment part there that goes into the little cup holder, if you will, for the actual wing. For the burst stream of destruction, this is going to be a standard traditional support arm, and as you can see, in form, the one on the right is the same as the one on the left, but in execution, just a little bit different. This is just a little bit bigger. And then for the actual cradle for Blue Eyes, that is going to be its own separate, unique part. As you can see, that does pop off, so yeah. And then that cradle does have a hinge on it, so that's pretty cool. Now, we do have the burst stream of destruction here, and you have to assemble that out of the box. Let's go ahead and put the effect part together in real time. So it is kind of hard to see everything because everything is closer to a clear color, but you are going to have the different pieces clearly labeled in the manual, the instruction sheet that you're going to get as to where everything is going to go. So all you have to just do is make sure you're putting everything in correctly, and then you have to avoid the actual hole, which will be for the Tamashii stage arm. And there you go. And then the last one is hidden by the lightning. Maybe. And there you go. So that's going to be everything for Blue Eyes for what he comes with. And I think, in short, it's going to be pretty much essential. There's not really much else that Blue Eyes could come with unless we're doing a deep dive into the legacy support from some of the recent TCG sets, which I don't really know when it comes to mainstream popularity what they really could have included. An actual more so beam effect would have been really cool instead of this because, I mean, if you're a Yu-Gi-Oh fan, and I don't know who's going to be buying this that isn't a Yu-Gi-Oh fan, even the legendary Super Saiyan Goku that we just got has a very similar in-color pattern to this Kamehameha effect. You know, close enough we can fudge it. You know what I mean? But nevertheless, just a beam, maybe like a fusion effect of some kind, but maybe we'll get that with a possible Blue Eyes Ultimate. But if you need other effect parts or support stands, you know I have videos to help you out. Size comparison time so you can see how big Blue Eyes White Dragon is going to be. And I was pretty surprised because I was even seeing the prototype in person. I was under the impression that Blue Eyes was going to be a bit bigger. But he really isn't than some of the other figures. I think he would have to be a rather solid size. You can definitely manage to fit 3 of these on your shelf, especially considering you can make him much wider with a very large wingspan or a bit more compact with a smaller wingspan. So buy now, skip, or wait for a deal. Obviously, compared to what else is on the market, because the Vulcan Log is the alternative Blue Eyes, this is going to be pretty much the only, but the definitive Blue Eyes White Dragon action figure on the market. I do think that there are a few small quality control issues, but nevertheless, particularly with my unit, and others, if they do have it, it could be disastrous. I think the figure, though, is still great, and I can definitely see where, for what I paid, the figure's money went into everything. Now, I will say that I do hope as we continue with more Yu-Gi-Oh! Figures, we do get more bang for our buck, but considering other releases in the SH MonsterArts line have dialed back accessories, I don't have much hope. I want to be optimistic, but Tamashii Nations, prove me wrong. I love this figure. It's great. This is a great template for dragons across the brand moving forward. Keep it up.